Welcome to the next episode of the Staying Muddy podcast. Today we have one of our alumni. His name is Kevin Knarr. He's currently an engineer at JPL, and he has supported us for many years after he graduated as an alumni. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kevin. Give us an introduction.
Hey, well, thanks for letting me be on your podcast. I'm glad you guys started this. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can just start with like how I got to Cal State LA. I was playing soccer in Arizona, wanted to get a soccer scholarship. Got into a couple schools, but I was trying to balance an engineering program and soccer because I knew eventually I'd be in engineering. So one of my friends went to Cal State LA to play soccer and said they had a good engineering program. So I decided to go to Cal State LA to play soccer and then pursue engineering. And that same friend was it's David Meyer. He was a year ahead of me. And after he finished soccer, we were roommates also. He was doing this Baja, project, and he would come home like at 2 a.m. from like the Baja lab and stuff. And I was still playing soccer and started talking to him about it, and eventually knew like when soccer was done, like I was gonna go do this Baja project too because he was doing some cool stuff. So I finished soccer that season, which ends in like around Halloween time or November, and just walked over to the lab. Was like, well, my soccer career is over, so I got to fill that time somehow, and I filled it with Baja, and now here I am. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the better decisions I made. And I probably wouldn't be at least at JPL if I didn't start working on the Baja project.
It's interesting that you say that you also started out with athletics because in our previous podcast that we had with our advisor, Dr. Bachman, which you hang out with all the time, mm-hmm. You guys were both in athletics before you became engineers. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if there's kind of a correlation between athleticism and engineering.
Well, I think both of them, take dedication, right? I mean, when you're playing sports, especially like for college and for a scholarship, like you don't want to lose that scholarship, and you're dedicated. Like yeah, you have your practice and your games, but outside of that, I'm trying to run more than the other guys run. I'm going out with a bag of balls on the weekends and trying to practice and make myself better. And that's kind of how I also approach like engineering in Baja. Like, yeah, everyone does their homework, everyone does this, but now I'm doing, Baja. And not only am I doing Baja, but I'm sleeping in the lab and I'm dedicating myself to make the best car that, we can make. And so I think there is some correlation there. And I think it helped me, be dedicated to Baja.
If you're listening, join a sports team before you go into engineering.
Well, it seems like you spent some good time talking to your roommate beforehand about Baja. Did it live up? I mean, it seems like he like really hyped it up, and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna go check this place out. Did it live up to the hype? Like, what was the first thing? I'm really interested in like, what's the first thing as soon as you walked into those garage doors? Like, is it what it lived up to be?
Yeah, I mean, when I walked in and I was like, oh man, these guys are using heavy machinery, right? Like they're allowed to mill and weld. And I'd worked in some machine shops for summer jobs. I built cabinets one of the summers when I was in college, and so I worked in a wood shop and stuff like that. And so seeing all the tools that were in there and like it's kind of like the freedom to build whatever you can imagine, right? And there wasn't like a professor's telling you do this and do that, or you design it and someone else is going to build it. Like you were doing everything.
Right.
So it was cool, but also daunting because no one was there, giving you the right answer, right? Like in your class, you might struggle with a problem, and then you could go to your teacher even after and be like, oh, why did I get this wrong? What was I supposed to do instead? And they correct it for you, right? Yeah. And here you're like, is this the right way to build this? Is this the right suspension? Are these the right dimensions? And you don't know really until you test. Yeah. And so you're kind of out there on an island, like. You're just not, you know what I mean? It's kind of daunting when you're a student and you haven't done that before. I know like I didn't know how to start. And Jose, who was the captain the year I started, he he gave us kind of the newbies all kind of the same task, which was figure out the gearbox and engine positions, right?
Yeah.
It's like I don't know where to start, and then we like cut out the engine to scale and like a little gearbox to scale, and we drew like a frame to scale all on a piece of paper, and then you just kind of like put it in there. And so just knowing how to start was hard, and definitely used Jose's guidance. And
Wow.
I mean, going back to those guys, Jose and Dave, who got me into Baja, they restarted, the Baja program. So in 1999, I think we got first place. When I say we, the school, got first place, and then they were doing some construction on the engineering labs there. So it was dormant for like 4 years. So that means even like a freshman that was on that 99 team was long gone by the time, we started again. And
Right.
and so there was no transfer of knowledge. And I think somebody saw a trophy in one of the engineering labs and was like, "What's that trophy from?" And they're like, "Oh, we won the Baja competition." And they're like, "What's Baja?" And they explained it, and they're like, "Well, let's do that again." And so like Jose and a bunch of a group of other guys started it again. And of course, Dan Roberto, our famous Baja tech.
Yeah.
Without him, there's no way we would have got started, because he was part of all the championship teams, either as a student or faculty member. So, he helped start it back up in 2003. And then in 2004, which was my first year, we ended up getting 7th place. And hopefully you guys will have Jose on at some point, and he could talk about, the 03 and 04 seasons, because it's pretty cool to go from just starting again to finishing top 10.
Yeah, no, of course. Jeez.
Yeah, we definitely gotta invite him back to come back and tell us the stories. We love hearing the stories about like the history of the team and the craziness that ensues.
Yeah.
Your first initial task, like, because you said, oh, you give the newbies like that. I to be honest, like I probably wouldn't have given the newbies that particular task of setting up your positioning, because I mean it's super critical, right? Because you have to get that center to center just right on the engine and the CVT or the gearbox. At least on our end, it's like we bring them in and we kind of show them the manufacturing portion of it, but that's definitely really daunting, especially how big was the team?
So the team was probably 7 or 8 recurring members.
Okay.
You know how some come early on and they don't show up after Christmas or something.
Yeah.
I think 7 or 8 recurring members, and we probably took 6 to competition. But I will say, he gave us these tasks, but the guys that were on the team before were also doing that, and I don't think they used any of the newbie configurations that we came up with. So it was sort of an exercise where I think Jose knew it may not, bear any fruit for the team. Like they kind of already knew where they were gonna go with it, but it was, letting us learn the process.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where the process is more important than the result for like a new student. But it's funny because I agree with Juan, because it's compared to like the things that we gave the new members, we would just put them to like sweep or organize toolboxes or things like that. Like I wonder if giving them something more challenging affects like their retention, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a delicate balance. If you give them something that is too overwhelming, they're just gonna like not want to come back. Depends on their personalities, right? If they like that kind of challenge or not. But I was also a junior. Actually, I was a senior, but I was a junior in engineering. And so it wasn't like I was a freshman where I haven't taken any math or engineering, right? Okay, so it's maybe a little bit different than some of the new students you guys might get as a freshman. That's the other thing was, when I was playing soccer, I was like, all right, I'm only going to do 12 units, right, which was the minimum to be a full-time student. And I'm just going to do 12 units because I want to focus on soccer. And then when soccer's done, I'll take all my classes. And I mean, that was probably a mistake from a standpoint of, well, first I was on scholarship, so I could have just gotten those free units, right? Like I could have got my classes paid for. But I just wanted the extra free time to work on soccer. So when I finished soccer, And also, since my roommate had done this ahead of me, he was like, we were both came from the same junior college where we couldn't take engineering classes. So as juniors, we're taking engineering 101 and engineering ethics, right? We're taking all the freshman classes just to get all of our units. So it's almost impossible to transfer from as a junior and graduate in 2 years with engineering degree, right? So I knew it was going to take 3 years anyway. So I took it slow while I was playing soccer. And then when I was done, I went into Baja, and then I took 22 units a quarter. These are quarters.
Okay.
So I was taking 22 units a quarter, usually like 2 labs. And then I was doing Baja. For 2005, it was actually a senior design project. It was the first time, we got to do it as a senior design project as well. And I know we're about to talk about the 2005 season, and I can go into those details. But so there was, besides the normal Baja work, we had to write our report. Actually, back then, the first quarter was supposed to be the same project for everybody in senior design. So it was like you have to design and build a wrench, or you have to design and build. My year, it was supposed to be, the water coolers in the office, and they're like really heavy, right? And people have to like tip them over to get the water in there. And they wanted you to design a way to do that if you were handicapped, if you were in a wheelchair. So you had to make a device that would you could crank or something, and it would get these water bottles into the cooler. And usually every student is on their own for the first quarter and designs it, at least on paper. And, some people can build prototypes. That's even bonus points. And then the second and third quarters, you're on a team like you are now normally for the whole year. So you're on a team and you guys do a project. So I told them, hey, we're doing Baja. We're going to do Baja the entire year. And we're not going to do the individual project the first quarter because there's so much work to do. So for the first quarter, we were the only ones that were actually a team doing a project. And so we had bigger reports that we had to give in. So around Thanksgiving or the Christmas break, we had to do a final report. I remember staying in the Baja lab and the janitor coming in like, oh, you guys are working late. And then the next day he came in, he's like, oh, you guys are back. And we go, we never left. We literally was up 24 hours till his next shift writing our report. Yeah, it was crazy.
Did you ever buddy up the chairs just to kind of lay down for a little bit?
Yeah, I think I would just sleep on the floor, and I would lay the chair down so my head would rest on the backrest like a pillow.
Oh yeah.
Oh, smart.
And,
Yeah, we had too many little steel chips
yeah,
it
it was messy down there. Yeah.
was
When we were doing it, we were the only people in the Baja lab. It was literally just the Baja team. So no one else came in there. And my year we only had 4 or 5 people on the team. So we were the only four people in that lab.
Jeez.
So we could keep it relatively clean.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Now it's you come in during a regular day, and well, obviously not now, but pre-COVID, there was 20, 25 people there at a time. Just
it was crazy. And then I think it was a little bit out of hand where people were going there to do homework and not work on Baja and stuff, right? And it's easy to get distracted. So yeah, it's better if you can make that just the Baja lab. But I understand people go in there to hang out and stuff.
So you started Baja up again. You were a student from 03 to 05, you said, so for 2 years. And then in the 04-05 season, you became the captain, right? So tell us a little bit about what that was like that jump in leadership.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost default option because there was only me and one other person that was gonna go on, and that wasn't a senior. And so one of us had to carry the torch. And I actually started promoting, I was like, oh, I just want to start working this right away. Right after competition, you have this motivation to I know what I want to do next year to make it better, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to lose that momentum. So I started designing it on my own, for the next year. And the fact that we got top 10, we got 7th, there's a rule that says 20% of your car has to be different, and I said, you know what, we're not going to touch this car. We're going to leave it alone. We're going to build a brand new car from scratch. And my other goal was to not have Dan build so much of the car because, you know, he was doing a lot of the machining because we were, you know, still new, trying to learn it all. And then, you know, it burns him out by the end of the year. You know, at the end of the year, he always, you know, says he's going to quit Baja, right, and not help out next year. And so I was like, I don't want to burn out Dan. So I said, we're going to build a brand new car and the students are going to be the ones building it. I'm not going to let Dan touch anything on this frame. You know, we'll have him do the gearbox. Obviously he helped out a little bit, but we did do the frame all by ourselves. So I just started drawing it in Solidworks, you know, right after competition, and and knew kind of where we wanted to go. Changed a couple things, just to, you know, we had to change something for the judges. And by the time summer was ending, you know, I had a decent kind of design, and I just had to recruit. You know, I got enough leeway with the faculty to make it a senior design project, and I needed 2 more students. So the other guy that was in Baja, James Hong, he was the one that from last year, you know, it was obvious. So we needed 1 more guy. We got George Lopez, who we call J-Lo. And so it was me, J-Lo, and James. And we went into the fall as the Baja team. And then we picked up Robert Schisler, who was like a junior at the time. He was super hard worker, you know, good in the machine shop, solid addition. And we only had 1 or 2 other like stragglers that came here and there, but it was mostly us 4 that designed the whole car and built the whole car from scratch that year.
Oh, wow. Did you guys spend time like actively like trying to recruit, or was it just people that you had met through your classes? And
you know, I probably didn't do a good job of that recruiting because I was just I was like just too busy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's a hard balance where, you know, I wish I recruited more, but you know, like you said earlier, it's like you bring them in and you got to give them something to do. And sometimes, I mean, it's definitely more work for you to bring on a person who doesn't know what they're doing than for you to just do the work, right? Yeah. But so it's hard to have that long-term, especially when you're a senior and you're doing senior design and you want to win the competition. It's really hard to be like, all right, I'm going to take my time that I don't have and bring in some freshmen. And, you know, in the long term, it would have been better. But I was just like too focused on what I was doing to really recruit enough people. And it was also senior design. So it was a little bit hard because it was like, well, if you get too much help, right, is that really fair? Because it's supposed to be your senior project.
That's true.
So if you have 10 people helping you with your senior project, right? So I think I also felt a little bit like guilty if I had too many people helping us. But for the most part, it was just hard to split my time between doing the work and teaching someone how to do the work.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, even now there's a whole team dedicated to just recruiting. Like that's, and then there's certain people that we sort of like dictate like, hey, you're the one that's going to be teaching the newer members and stuff. So, yeah. I mean, going from a 4-person team, 3-person team to a 40-person team, it's a lot easier with more hands for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And yeah, so it was just me and James who had any knowledge of Baja before that. George hadn't done Baja or anything. So, you know, and again, our team was only, you know, 2 years from starting again. And so it wasn't like I had 10 years of experience and or like knowledge passed on besides Dan, right? Dan was huge in those first couple of years. He was always been huge for the team, right?
Right.
So, you know, we bounced ideas off Dan and things like that.
Was Dan also the, because now Blake, he's the one that sort of helps the senior design team sort of build a lot of their parts. Was Dan that same person during your time?
Yeah, helping senior design people, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like not just Baja.
Yeah, exactly. It was Dan, and I can't forget the other. There was one other person that shared. It wasn't Blake. It was whoever Blake replaced. Was helping senior design people as well. So that was always hard, right? Because crunch time for Baja is when it's crunch time for senior design. Yeah. And so Dan's trying to help these guys build stuff, and we're like, oh man, but you know, we need this gearbox or something like that. So
yeah, the it's really weird, at least because I did senior design for I think we did front and rear suspension for senior design, and it was really weird because everybody else on senior design was on another completely different schedule. Like they were like just starting to deal with their requirements and barely starting to design it, and we're already building things. And it was such a weird, like, because even senior design, and I'm sure on your time, during your time, they had like reports that you had to turn in, and it didn't coincide at all with what it was to actually compete in Baja. You're just doing reports for a completely different reason. Yeah, that was definitely weird. At least on my end, that was something hard to get on.
Yeah, I remember our first presentation, you know, the fall quarter final presentation, where everyone's just giving their paper design of this water cooler system, right? And I walked in and I brought the tacked frame from Baja in and put it on the table. And so I was like, look, here's the sketch of it in SolidWorks, and here we built it, you know. And I think all the students hated me because we were just kind of like, we had to be ahead of them, right? We had to be building already and stuff. And so it made, and Dr. Shaw, who was our senior design advisor, he liked me too. So it was like, I think it put the standard a little higher for the rest of the class, and they were kind of annoyed with it, I think.
Overachievers.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. In our first initial, what is it called? Like our first initial review, when we actually had to show our like sketches, well, our sketches, everybody had like on engineering paper sort of like written out in pencil what they were deciding. And then we had full models, like completely done with the car. And it was definitely weird for them. Because at the time we had like judges coming around and looking at our posters. So they would go from one team having just like hand-drawn sketches to another team where it's completely modeled and like close to done.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, Baja makes you learn SolidWorks fast, right? Faster than you will in a class. And I remember that's the other thing that we learned that in my first year in Baja. I hadn't touched SolidWorks, and back then they didn't actually have classes at Cal State LA for SolidWorks, like I think they do now. And so
Yeah.
Or it was like a voluntary thing, and I think they just stopped at the 2D sketches. It's more like AutoCAD. And so, yeah, we were like taught how to build the frame, like start with sketch, start with a plane, start with a sketch, extrude, and you learn all this stuff. And then, you know, before you know it, you get pretty proficient fast. So similarly, at one of our presentations, I had the gearbox. I had the gears actually drawn out, and I had the input gear spinning and the output gear spinning at like a different speed. And people hadn't even opened SolidWorks yet at senior design, right? Like they haven't even used it. So it definitely accelerated, right? Like your need to learn everything.
Yeah, I almost feel like in Baja, if you're not learning SolidWorks like pretty much as soon as you start, you're kind of not really like a super effective member of the team until you can learn it. Like there's only so many tasks that we can give you in terms of like manufacturing before you can start designing. Like I feel like it's almost an essential tool for designing, unless you're like really, really, really great at calculations and free body diagrams. I feel like just seeing it visually helps so much. And so I think it's like almost the first thing we do. And we have workshops, especially like throughout the semester for incoming students. Like we just get them on a workshop and have them learn SolidWorks before they do anything. Even if it's just modeling like some part of the car that we like didn't have modeled before. Like I think for the longest time, I think we didn't have a model of like the brake light. And we would put somebody to model the brake light. Like it's a kind of a small part of the car, but it looks really cool seeing it in the cast. So it would be like small stuff like that where it's, even if it's not like an essential part, it's like something that we want to have, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's so good. Like even small parts like that for like packaging and things like that, making sure there's no interferences with the frame and knowing where the wiring goes. Like small things like that definitely adds up.
We are having a Chipotle collab fundraiser with our sister team Formula SAE on Saturday, March 27th from 5 to 9 p.m. for pickup only at Chipotle location on 2021 West Main Street, Suite 210 in Alhambra, California. Use the promo code CLVCN9X when ordering online or through the app. You can also show the official Chipotle flyer at checkout. If you have any questions, all the info for the fundraiser is in the description and on our website, Castellet Baja SAE.
So to sort of jump in, we kind of want to hear a couple stories through your 2005 sort of season, your experiences with like Jason and, you know, the Cal State LA branded rules that we have now.
Yeah, so to do that, I can share like a compilation video that kind of is in order of how we built it. I think it's mostly a lot of competition videos, so I can show that, and I'll just pause it along the way and fill you in on some stories.
Yeah, that works.
Right. So for anyone who's not prepared for this, because we planned this out before we did this particular recording, just because Kevin Knarr happens to be in the years where this all happened. So Cal State LA, we added a lot of rules to the rule book. We added a good handful to them. Like the reason they're in the rule book now is because of either, you know, you can call them mistakes that we made. I think we consider them a little bit more risks that we took in terms of the way that we built our car, things we did at competition. You know, we were pioneers, so some of the things that we pioneered, I don't think the judges liked very much. So this is going to be like a really cool story of our adventures putting rules in the room.
So yeah, 2005 was in Tucson, and what was cool about this year was it was the 100-year anniversary of SAE, not of Baja, but of when SAE was formed. And so they wanted to do a 100-mile race. So instead of the 4-hour endurance race that you normally have, it was 100 miles. I think they still wanted it to be about 4 hours, but it was going to be 100 miles. And so the course was like 2 miles long. And so they were going to do 50 laps. So as soon as the first car finished 50 laps, the race was done. And then they count up how many laps everyone else did. So if the first car did 50 and the next car was on the 42nd lap, you know, that's how many points they got, you know, per lap and stuff like that. That's how they calculated it. So, and the other thing was they took the cap off of registration. So normally, I think now it might be 100 is the most that you can register for Baja, and then you're like on a wait list. Mm-hmm. They said there's no limit, and so there was 131 cars that registered, and I think like 90 something started the endurance race. So there may be some that didn't show up, maybe some that didn't pass tech, or maybe some that broke during the other event. So this was normally, you know, you get like 80 cars that show up and 60 start the race. We're talking about 90 cars in the race. So playing the video here. So I'll pause it here just so from left to right, so there's J-Lo sitting on the tire. Can you guys see my cursor too, or no?
I can see it.
You may not be able to. So J-Lo's on the tire there. There's Robert Schisler in the back behind him. There I am. Now I can't remember. He was our engineering, the dean there. Now I can't remember his name. And Dr. Shaw is next to him, James Hong, and then there's Dan Roberto. So since we finished 7th the year before, we got number 7. And since there was more, you know, 100 cars or more, they gave us 007. So we just kind of ran with it. You know, we're 007, we're the Golden Eagles. We put a golden gun on there for, you know, the team sponsor 007. So, and so what we did we had a James Hong. So we're like, if anyone asks you your name at competition, you say you're Hong, James Hong. So that was our running joke. And this was right before competition. And there's Dr. Sharif sitting in the driver's seat, who was our advisor, helped Baja run. And there's Dr. Shaw. So this was a couple of days before competition, right before we left. Oh, we have to ignore that one for now, but so what that was, there was always a Pinewood Derby, which Dr. Ataro, who was running super mileage next door, would put it on. And so you get these kits of a little wooden derby car. It's just a square, and you mill it out, or you know, shape it, and then we raced it against everyone in the engineering lab. And we didn't get along with super mileage, who was next to us. And so we always said, you know, super mileage sucks was our motto. And so we had SMS, that's what it stands for, SMS. So you might see a bunch of SMS stuff in here. And for years, we would enter the Derby and we'd carve SMS in the Derby car and race it in the super mileage lab. They had no idea what it meant. And then we would always zip tie it to the car during the endurance race. And so I think later you're going to see that. And that expedition went on for like 5 years, and then I think they stopped doing the Pinewood Derby. But you can see here we were barbecuing actually in the lab, which probably wasn't a good idea.
That's super safe.
Okay.
Yeah, normally we're outside. I think it's probably raining that day or something. So yeah, we would. That's how we'd keep going. And you know, this is the same, I think, mills that you guys still have, right? So
yeah, pretty much all of that looks exactly the same.
Yeah. And you'll see a picture at the end that has all these cars lined up. But I think this yellow one was a 99 car, and these red ones were from the 80s that were all championship cars. So we had them to reference.
I think the green one is right there.
There's the green one too, which I think was 97. Yellow had shingles, but he worked through them, and we just quarantined him.
That picture, I just want to say that picture did not age well.
Okay, so this is how we tested in 05. So anyone who is in Baja now or recently, and you guys have that nice trailer, don't ever complain about that trailer. It may not be like what other schools have, but this was our trailer. We had to get JLo's mom's van out the seats. We had to take the tires off and cram it in. This is the only way we could drive. There was no trailer. There was, no other way to transport the vehicle. We couldn't afford like a U-Haul just for that day trip. So we crammed it in the back. We could fit like one toolbox with us. So if anything broke, we were kind of like, well, testing's over. And we drove up the 5. I forgot the name of it, like Bumblebee or something like that. And like an hour or 2 away. So that was how we had to test. And we had to drive uphill in snow both ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you might hear this down here. That was actually Jose driving. So right on that jump, I don't know if when you guys play this, if you'll be able to hear it, but if you can go back and listen. On that little jump, you can, when the back end, you can see the back end pop up. I'll talk more about that later. When it lands, you can hear like a clacking sound. Maybe we thought it was suspension. What was happening was this clutch was opening, right? Because there's no resistance. So it was like opening. And then when you landed, it would need a lot more torque and it would close to get, a higher ratio. And it was, and the clutch components were hitting each other, and they're normally made out of steel. And the one that we got here had aluminum, like the ramps on the, I forgot what they're called, but the ramps on the clutch were aluminum. And after some testing like that, we were out there for like an hour, the clutch shattered. So the parts shattered, and you're going to see the spring that's in the clutch that's all wound up is just like out and just jammed in the engine.
Oh no.
And you'll hear me call Jose a bad name in this video, because this was the clutch that was supposed to be on the 03 car or the 04 car that got 7th place. And it didn't come in time. So Jose ordered it. It was like the 780 clutch and the Comet 780 clutch. And it didn't come in. And he was like, hey, we have to put the 790 clutch in, which they had from the year before. And it's too big. It's like a bigger diameter on the driven clutch. And it didn't fit in the frame. So like 3 days before competition, we had to cut the back of the frame out and make it longer just to fit that clutch, because this one that broke didn't show up. So I told Jose, I was like, hey man, we didn't have time to test in 04. We got lucky, we got 7th. I was like, this would have been the clutch on the 7th place car, and it would have broke in competition for sure. And so like, we kind of got lucky that it didn't show up in time, and we were able to test and break it in testing, which is what you want to do. You want to find your weak components.
Yeah.
And then we went back to Roy at Comet Clutch, and he gave us a steel part, and we were able to get it up and running in time.
Yeah, like an hour into competition, a broken clutch is, you don't want a broken clutch.
Oh, like you're basically done. I mean, someone might have an extra clutch there. And I do like the camaraderie at these competitions, right? I mean, if teams have extra parts, even though you're racing against them, they want to help you get back on the track. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, you'll see the spring that's like under the engine there.
Oh.
Oh no.
This one you bought. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's not supposed to be there.
You guys can hear the audio, right?
It was hard to hear what he said.
Okay, that's right. You don't want to hear it.
Mm.
So yeah, we had just put it in neutral and tow it. This is Robert. He's just steering it, and we just towed it down this really sharp hill. And he just got dust all over the back of him. Which I think we have I think the picture doesn't show it well, but he basically was white where his goggles were and just dust everywhere.
Oh,
Oh no. You little clown.
Man, that frame was tiny. You guys were pushing it.
Yeah.
You guys are
There's Jose in the background. Yeah, this was our team. This is the basically the core team that stuck around. So this is our test drive right before leaving. You can see how well it turns, at least on pavement. I'll have more on that later.
It's always better on pavement. It's always better on pavement.
Oh, this is me gressing. I remember when Rafa, were you guys there when Rafa like dove out of the car?
Oh yeah, he's doing egress.
Yeah.
It's like a little dolphin.
Like ejecting himself. Might as well pull like an ejecting cord. Anyway, so I try to teach people to just be like slower is faster. You know what I mean?
You didn't have to wear any of the, or did you guys have to wear any fire retardant?
No, not back then.
Just shorts and
well, I had like a cutoff there for, yeah, I could have wore that driving. I actually just wore warm-up pants because of all the dirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, no fire stuff or anything like that.
They didn't even have like a legitimate firewall. There's holes like completely on the side of that car, aren't there?
On ours? I don't think so.
Like you have the firewall from top to bottom.
This one?
There's like aren't there like side panels that didn't get covered? Oh no, you guys still have them. I think it's either the green car or the yellow car where like not the whole thing is even covered.
I don't know if they had rules back then. When we did it, they had like if they could fit a pen in between the sheet metal and the tubing, then it was too big of a hole. But yeah, I was super proud of us. We passed tech on the very first try. Like we rolled in and they didn't find one thing that kicked us out. And that was like one of the things I was like adamant about going into that season. And so, as you guys know, it's always like you can ruin a competition by not passing tech on time after you work all year. And we've done that before where you miss the first day or something. And I know, and even when we got 7th, we were working all night till like 3 a.m. just to pass tech in time to race. So I didn't want to do that. So I was really proud of us that we passed tech on the very first try. All right, so here's our hill climb. There's 2 versions of this. This was actually a little bit out of order. We did this after what you're going to see later, which was driving off a cliff a little bit. So this was actually like our second event. Oh, I'm sorry. This is hill climb, not rock crawl. This was our first event. So this is James driving, and I think like 20 cars made it all the way up. It doesn't look that bad, but there's like just really soft sand right there, and it was this weird thing where if you got to basically where we were, I'm gonna pause this one. If you got like an extra foot, you would pass like 60 cars because everyone got stuck in this one little rut, and then some cars were able to get like just a little bit past it. So we got stuck in that rut where we were just like 60 of us basically tied, So I think we got like, I don't remember exactly what we got, 30th place or something like that. So this is the infamous cliff diving, which led to lots of rules and lots of stories that you might still hear. So this is me driving. If you noticed in that video on the street, we turned quite well. I will say we turned left a lot better than we turned right. So that's, working on symmetry when you build your frame and suspension is important. And this was a right-hand turn. So this was basically like a 180 turn. You're coming straight and you got to turn a little bit more than 90 to come down this hill. So you're supposed to come down this hill, and we had a proportioning valve, right? So we were able to turn our front brakes off, and this was I'm not sure if it's even allowed anymore. I don't think the rules necessarily, it's kind of ambiguous. So,
Yeah.
you know, we locked all 4 wheels because we had the proportioning valve off, you know, which decides how much pressure to send to the front versus the rear brakes. And so once you pass tech, we were supposed to turn off the proportioning valve on the front brakes, which means when you slam on the brakes, you might slow down a little bit, but your front tires keep rolling. And so you can steer even while you're braking. And that's how we tested, you know, and that's what I was used to. And, you know, in the heat of competition, you know, we didn't have a written procedure or checklist or anything like that. We never turned off the proportioning valve, you know, and so as I'm making this turn, I'm like, why is it not turning, right? We also forgot to put a transponder on, so this may not have even counted. So I'm turning. Let me play the video, and then I think there's a slow-mo after it, and then I'll explain it a little bit more. So if you can't see, it's on the top of this dirt hill. I'm supposed to turn right, and instead took the shortcut.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so technically I didn't miss any cones. So we should have been able to not get a penalty for that. As you can see, there's no cones down here. So so yeah, I'm turning and it's not turning, it's just pushing. And at the time I'm not thinking like, oh, proportioning valve. I just don't know why it's not turning. And we don't have reverse on the car. We went with a 2-speed. Because the year before we had reverse, but we didn't have time to build a shifter. And we never used reverse. And so I was like, let's not use reverse, let's have 2 speeds. Because it's a long endurance race. We wanted a good, you know, high gear for, you know, climbing and stuff. And then we knew it was gonna be flat because they wanted to, you know, get around the laps fast. And so we had 2 gears. So I had no option. Like I was like, well, I could stop, and then I'm just like, I don't finish, right? I'm just stopped. And all I could see was like a little hump of rocks, and I assumed there was dirt right on the other side. Like I didn't know I was way up here. And so I was like, well, I'll just go over. I think there might have been a cone up there. I was like, well, I'll just like go over and take a penalty and do a wider turn. And I went over like rock, and then just like nothing. And I'm just going like, I'm free, just nose free falling, which felt like forever. And all I could do was like flash 2, and I welded the frame, and I was like kind of self-taught, right? And so I welded the entire frame, and I actually remember I was welding over Christmas break. I was by myself in the lab. I remember it was New Year's Eve. And I'm just welding away, and I look up and it's like 1 a.m. I'm like, oh, it's 2005 now. And I just like kept welding, right? And I just remember like, oh, because you know, you kind of get lazy welding for hours and hours, and you're like, that's good enough, right? Or I don't need to fill that. And so I'm just like flashing to me welding, like, did I do a good enough job? And just like the first impact was just like gnarly. Like it, you know, it was a jolt to the system. And then I had this weird calmness. I think I knew at that point, like I wasn't gonna, you know, get hurt really, because I was just tumbling. And at that point, I literally just like took my hands off and just went like this and just like relaxed and just like went for the ride. And I was at peace with that, but I was just like, I just broke the car. I was so pissed. I was like, I just broke the car in the second event. After all this work, I was just like, I let everyone down. I was so pissed that we like broke the car, right? And so I tumble and I land. So I see like, and it was like really clear day. So I was like, blue sky, dirt, blue dirt, blue dirt. And I remember I felt like I was gonna land on my wheels and something stopped me. And that was the other car, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here, waiting to start, you know, he's gonna go after me. So I land and my front wheels kind of like land on his roll cage and we're almost like face to face. And I look at him and I just go, you're next. And his eyes are like super big, right? So let me play this in slow-mo here. So you can see how it goes up, because you couldn't see how it goes up.
Oh, yeah.
So I had no view of what was over the edge, and my wheels are turned all the way to the right, and then it's just like right here is just like free fall.
It's like tumbling
for like 20 feet, 25 feet, and then just like
Like when you landed it up right.
Yeah. And then like, see, I was like gonna land on my wheels, and then they get stuck on the car who's in line there. So the damage after that, so I was like so tense when I like was going over for that first hit. I like squeezed the steering wheel and like bracing myself, and the impact, I buckled the steering column. So this tube actually bends up and down. It's hard to see in this view, but you can see the U-joint is on the floor of the U-Haul, and then it goes like up and then back down towards the door. And so that's bent. And so what we did was we took a 3/4 inch tube and hammered it down the center to straighten it out. So we actually did the endurance race with the outer tube and an inner tube to straighten it out. So it was just that. Obviously the number on the top of the car was crushed, which we fixed, and the fire extinguisher. So that's the first rule that they changed. So when I came down, the fire extinguisher is like right next to me, right? Like kind of armpit level. And so I'm going down, and the impact just broke the fire extinguisher away from its mount. And the fire extinguisher was like off to the side. And Dr. Sharif just went to Walmart and bought another strap, but those were plastic straps. And now the rule is you have to have a steel strap.
Stay tuned next time for the second part of the episode. Thank you for listening to the Staying Muddy podcast. If you like what we do, join our subreddit Staying Muddy Podcast, or if you would like to learn more about our team, you can visit our website Castellet Baja SAE or follow us on social media at Castellet Baja SAE. Thanks again for listening.